Okay. Okay, sounds good. All right, well, let's kind of jump into this. So today, what I was asked to present, or what I propose to present, is a intro to Power Apps portals. So just a little quick introduction as to who I am, if I get the slides to go. There we go. So my name is Nicholas Hayduk. I am the president and a software engineer with Engineered Code Consulting, Inc. I am a Microsoft MVP, and I've been working, as we were just talking about, I've been working with the Power Apps portals for many years now, 10 plus years. My career began with ADX Studio, which was the company that originally built the portals and was acquired by Microsoft in 2015. If you feel so inclined, you are more than welcome to connect with me on any of the social media platforms that I frequent, whether that's on LinkedIn, Twitter. I do have a blog that hasn't been so active over the last few months. COVID's kind of taken some of the steam out of the blog, but the YouTube channel we do put out pretty much every week. Our goal was to do one every week in 2021, and so far up to now we've done that. So every Tuesday my time, I think that's close to, it would be kind of Wednesday morning your time, I release a kind of roughly about 2-minute tip, all focused on Power Apps portals. So you're more than welcome to subscribe to that channel. As well as the portal.libsync there. That is a podcast that I do with another MVP, Nick Dolman, that is focused on portals. We call that one Refresh the Cache. So, in the portals community, because it was started here in Canada, a lot of the MVPs and kind of the community people are in Canada. So it can get a little confusing because there's essentially two Nicks from Canada that are MVPs that focus on portals. So between the two of us, we like to confuse people. So, but if podcasts are your things and you're interested in learning more about portals, you definitely check that out. Originally started way back in the day by Nick and another MVP based in Canada, not named Nick, named Colin Vermander. They started that, but Colin has now joined the mothership. He's with Microsoft now, so he is excluded from. No, he's not excluded, but he's kind of focusing on his Microsoft gig now. So it's up to me and the other Nick to carry on that torch. So, but yeah, please reach out or connect on any of those social media channels. Happy to connect with you. So what is the agenda for today? So this is kind of just where I want to ask some questions, just to understand the audience in terms of the kind of the familiarity with, is there anyone on this call that, knows Power Apps portals? Or is there anyone on this call that has no idea about what portals are? Like, I'm just trying to get a sense for, what the familiarity is with Power Apps portals, Power Platform in general, Power Apps. I heard someone talking about Canvas apps. So since I guess we don't have thousands of people on the call, I'm just wondering if the participants can each come off mute just for a second and just kind of tell me what they know about Power Platform, what they know about Power Apps, and what they know about portals. So maybe starting with so we've got Peter and Ben are both kind of organizers, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
Terry.
Yeah, and then Terry. So Henry, would you mind just coming off mute and maybe just giving us a little bit of background on, what you're interested in hearing about today and what your experience is with the Power Platform?
Yep, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Henry. I work for consultancy called Dialog IT in Perth. So I worked with Terry before in the past. The last few years, we're focusing on Power Apps and its technology. So I did dive a little bit into the Power Apps portal as one of the service offering for one of our clients. So I do kind of understand a little bit of the purpose behind it as an extension for a non-AD user or public users to access Power Apps or application or data, the way to sort of represent the data in a way that's easy to digest for people outside the organizations that don't have access to Microsoft licensing. But that's pretty much about it. I haven't implemented anything to any of the clients. It was pretty much just an exploration exercise.
Oh, no, that's great. I mean, I think you could probably give most of the presentation. That was a very good, succinct intro into what Power Apps portals are. Thank you, Henry. Who's next on my list? Shams?
Yeah, sorry, my mic was mute. Yeah, I actually haven't done much on the Power App portals, but we are looking to do something on Power App portals for our external suppliers.
Okay. And do you have experience with things like model-driven apps or Canvas apps?
I have experience in Canvas apps, but I know model-driven app, but haven't done much on them.
Okay, great. Kush?
Yes, hi, I'm Kush, I'm from Pete. So yes, not really too much about Power Apps portal, but quite definitely we have implemented few, again, lost count of how many Power Apps canvas we have implemented through the organization. So it's more like Power Apps, Flow, and Power BI. So the user will enter the information, it goes through Flow, some approval requests, for example, some data governance for Flow, and then that gets presented to the leadership team via Power BI.
Okay, cool. Robert?
G'day, Rob from the Department of Education in Western Australia. We're just rolling out the Power Platform into our environment at the moment. Personally, I've created a couple of apps, a couple of flows, a couple of Power BI reports. I'm generally aware of Power Apps portals, but not sort of looking at it from the point of view of how could we best utilise that within our education space. So that's my interest.
Sure, great. And then Nathan.
Yeah, hi. I'm Nathan. I work with Terry a lot of the time, and my focus is generally, my experience, is mainly around Power Apps, Power Automate, and Dataverse features. The last couple of months I've been working on a portals project, so I'm actually really excited with it. It's quite an interesting piece of work. But yeah, I'm just hoping to see if I can learn some more tips and tricks and see how it goes from there. Yeah.
Awesome, great. Okay, so it seems like we've got a mix of people who maybe have seen a little bit, others who maybe have not so much. So why don't we kind of dive in here? So if we get to our first topic here, so what are Power Apps portals? So this screenshot here, that is a Power Apps portal. So in terms of branding from Microsoft, I guess the first thing I would say about any branding from Microsoft is don't get too attached, because it might change. Probably will change tomorrow. You never know. This particular product has been known by many things over its lifetime. As I mentioned, it started off as ADX Studio portals. It then, after the acquisition by Microsoft, was known as the portal capabilities for Dynamics 365, Dynamics 365 portals, a few different names, eventually finding its current name of Power Apps portals. The key here is that in terms of, again, this is kind of on the marketing side of things from Microsoft, where this fits into the Power Platform is under Power Apps. So in our Power Platform, we've got things like we've got Power Apps, we've got Power BI, we've got Power Virtual Agent. So we've got these different, these different kind of blocks within the Power Platform. And then within Power Apps, you've got 3 different types. So still, there's a lot of people, when they think Power Apps, they think of what are now known as Canvas apps. They're kind of the original Power Apps. They kind of started off maybe in the SharePoint world, and they are definitely kind of built on top of the connector framework. So the similar connector framework as to what is available in Power Automate, which is another part of the Power Platform. So we've got Power Automate, which has these hundreds of different connectors that can connect to all these different systems. So Canvas apps are these kind of, they call them kind of pixel perfect drag and drop ability to write these. They call them low code You know, I've seen some pretty sophisticated formulas in there that I would argue are high code, but so we got Canvas apps, which are these kind of low code drag and drop UI for building out these applications. So that's kind of one type of Power App. The other type of Power App that there is model-driven apps. Model-driven apps originate from the world of Dynamics CRM, Dynamics 365, Dynamics 365 customer engagement. Again, there's probably 3,000 names for these things, but we have Dynamics CRM, Dynamics 365, which always had this excuse me, had this capability that we called XRM. So there was always this kind of flexible data model where we could create new tables in the database. We could add new columns to the tables in the database, and we could kind of build these forms out and build out these sitemaps. And you could kind of build these applications kind of very centered on data. And those are what eventually kind of became known as model-driven apps. So we've got our Canvas apps, we've got our model-driven apps, and the model-driven apps are built on top of what is now known as Dataverse. So Dataverse, again, multiple names for this. So Dataverse was originally called the Common Data Service, or CDS. So Dataverse is just the new name for CDS, or Common Data Service. And that is, again, kind of goes back to the origins are back in the Dynamics CRM world. So whereas the Canvas apps are built on not a single data source, Canvas apps are built on that connector framework that is kind of shared with Power Automate. Whereas model-driven apps, there is one data source for model-driven apps, and that is Dataverse, or CDS, which is essentially a layer of abstraction on top of a database. So there are actual multiple databases that go into a Dataverse database. So we're talking about things like SQL, Cosmos DB, Azure Blob Storage. There's a number of data storage things that are kind of all abstracted away into a single, what looks like a single database, but underneath the hood is actually multiple things. So that is what kind of Dataverse is. And so our model-driven apps, when we're building them, they're all built on top of Dataverse. And so the first thing to understand, and a very common pitfall with Power Apps portals, is to understand is that Power Apps portals come from Dynamics, they come from model-driven apps, and they are built on top of Dataverse. So the idea of using connectors with Power Apps portals, I don't want to say it's not possible, because there are ways that you can leverage connectors with Power Automate, which can obviously talk to Dataverse. But in general, you kind of have to think of Power Apps portals are almost an extension of model-driven apps, and Power Apps portals are really designed for working with data that's in Dataverse. So that's really the first question that you have to ask yourself: is Power Apps portals right for my project? The first question is my data going to reside in Dataverse? If it's not going to reside in Dataverse, then there's a good chance that Power Apps portals is not the right tool for you. Otherwise, you're going to be doing a lot of work to kind of get your data into Dataverse. And if there's no reason to do that except for Power Apps portals, then you might want to reconsider your options. So the key with Power Apps portals and what makes them different from Canvas apps and model-driven apps is that they are available to external users. So that means users who are not necessarily within the Azure Active Directory tenant of the organization. So both Canvas and model-driven apps require you to log in with essentially your Office 365 account in order to access these interfaces. That is not a requirement for Power Apps portals. So while there are use cases for Power Apps portals to be consumed by internal audiences, and we'll talk about some of those, but kind of spoiler alert, one of those would be an internal help desk type situation. The vast majority of portals that we see being implemented are about exposing the data that's in Dataverse to external audiences. So those are typically things like your customers, your partners, or your employees. So as I mentioned, typically meant for non-Power Platform users who don't have an account in your Azure Active Directory. And that is kind of the purpose of Power Apps portals. As I mentioned, Power Apps portals originally came in as Dynamics 365 portals, and we'll talk about why that is here in a few minutes. But one of the stories that I like to tell is, so when Canvas apps were kind of introduced and brought into the Power Platform, I think the number one request or the number one idea that was put out by the community was to make Canvas apps available to external audiences. So make it so that someone could open up a Canvas app without logging into Azure Active Directory. And so when Microsoft did what was mostly kind of a branding or a marketing change to change portals from Dynamics 365 portals to Power Apps portals, essentially Microsoft said, hey, we've done it. We've given you a low-code interface for building external applications. So that wasn't by making Canvas apps accessible to everyone, but it was by making Power Apps portals accessible to everyone. So Power Apps portals is Microsoft's external-facing low-code application. And so again, it's really focused on users who are not Azure Active Directory users, which again are the typical audiences would be customers, partners, and as I mentioned, there are some use cases for employees, but often we're talking about customers or partners of an organization that are not are not users in the Azure Active Directory. And the key here is that a Power Apps portal is really just to the user. It's just a website. It's a website that you can log into, and it's a website where you can interact with data that's in Dataverse. Now, if you kind of are aware of kind of Dataverse is the underlying engine for Dynamics 365. So if you have a Dynamics 365 application, whether it's sales or customer service, those are the two main ones. Power Apps portals is the way that you can expose data that's in Dynamics 365 to these external audiences. Are there any kind of questions about that? Again, the key thing here is it's really just a website that allows users to log into and interact with data that's in Dataverse. That's really kind of the high-level overview of what Power Apps portals allows you to do. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone jumping off mute with any urgent questions. So let's talk about some of the main features of Power Apps portals. So as I mentioned, authentication with a contact. So within Dataverse, one of the core record types is the contact record. So anyone who logs into a portal, whether that's a customer, a partner, and even an employee, anyone who logs into a Power Apps portal is a contact in your Dataverse environment. So that's one of the kind of the core features that Power Apps portals offers is the ability to log in and have that login tied back to a contact record. Now, how the user logs in, well, that's a topic for that we could spend a whole session, and in fact we do have whole sessions on how to authenticate with Power Apps portals. The key here is that Power Apps portals actually supports multiple different types of authentication schemes. So it supports OpenID Connect. It supports certain OAuth providers. So you can have people log into your Power Apps portals using their already existing credentials. So things like Azure AD, things like Facebook, Twitter, Microsoft accounts, Gmail accounts, Yahoo accounts, all the different types of common identity providers. Power Apps portals can support that. The one that Microsoft would like you to use, because it's another one of their products, is a product by the name of Azure AD B2C, which is essentially Microsoft's Azure Active Directory solution for the B2C, so business to consumer, and that is basically an offering that allows you to connect up LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all these kind of third-party identity providers into a single application. So Power Apps portal supports a variety of different authentication providers. It supports OpenID Connect protocol, which is the kind of the de facto standard for authentication providers these days. So if your identity provider of choice is OpenID compliant, then you can kind of plug it into your portal. Now, again, when the user logs in, they still have to map back to a contact. But in terms of the actual username and password that is being used, you can have that managed kind of externally by an external identity provider, which is kind of the preferred method. The fewer usernames and passwords people have to remember these days, kind of the better. You're better off kind of tying that to something that they already have. Then you don't have to worry about, how does someone reset their password on the portal? It's like, well, that's not really the portal's problem. That's that other identity provider's problem. So that's the kind of the one main feature that you get with Power Apps portals is functionality that allows you to handle the authentication. The other thing, and again, this kind of ties back to if you're familiar with a model-driven app, the real, not to overuse the word power, but if Microsoft can overuse it, I guess I can overuse it. The real power of Power Apps portals is exposing features that you see in a model-driven app to the portal. So the two big things here are lists and forms. So in a model-driven app, we have views and forms. Power Apps portals allows you to take those views and those forms and put them directly on your portal. So you can define your views, which is basically your lists of records, and you can take those and expose them on a portal. You can also take the forms that you've built. So the same, if you go into make.powerapps.com, you create your solutions, you create your forms, you can create your custom tables, all that data that you're creating, you can take those same views and those same forms and expose them on a portal. So these lists and the basic and advanced forms, that's really the key with Power Apps portals, is that you take things that you've built already in a model-driven app, and you can expose those on a portal. And I'll show you kind of how that works here in a second. And then the other thing that it gives you is security. So within a model-driven app, you have your security roles. Well, with Power Apps portals, and if you're familiar with security roles, you'll know that they're based on the ownership of records. So you can say edit a contact if you were the one that created it, or whether and you have these business units, so you can edit these records if you've if you're in the same business unit as the person who created it. And there's all these kind of different tiers. And if you've ever configured a security role, you know about all the different pie pieces. You can have a little piece, or it can be a completely green circle, which means you can kind of do anything. Power Apps portals has their own security mechanism called web roles and table permissions. And the key here is records from Dataverse are exposed based on how they're related to the contact who's logged in. So once you log in, and if you think of probably what's the most common use case for a portal, which is help desk, when you log into a portal, what you want to do is you want to see all the support tickets or the cases that you've created yourself, or all the cases maybe that are related to the company that you're associated with. So the permissions model within Power Apps portals is all based on how are records related to the person who's signed in. Okay, so what I want to do is just quickly jump over and show you an example of a Power Apps portals, and kind of show you kind of these kind of basic concepts of authentication, views, forms, and how these work. So just open this up here. So I'm just going to go into, so here is my basic Contoso portal. You can see here I've used this in a few demos, so I've already changed some text here. But this is a basic Power Apps portal. We'll get into the templates here in just a minute, but this is a starter template, the most basic of all the things. The functionality that we get here is we can click the sign in button. In this particular case, there is a kind of a local sign-in built in where the username and password is stored in Dataverse. It's kind of a legacy thing, so we don't recommend that for production use, but it's always great to use for demos because it's nice and quick and easy to set up. But in this particular case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in with Azure Active Directory. So I'm already logged in with Azure Active Directory kind of holistically, but I'm going to click that button so that I can log in with Azure Active Directory into my portal. So click the sign in button, and the key here is that the portal supports multiple different identity providers as well. So you can end up with a lot of different types of buttons there for all the different things. So I'm logging into the portal. Now I am authenticated into my portal. So now I can see information. For example, I can go to my profile and I'm able to update information. Now, I think I was mentioning earlier that I'm somewhat of a golf nut. That's what I like to do in my spare time. So what I've done is I've created a listing of golf courses in my model-driven app. So if I go into my environment here, if I look at my solution here, I've created a custom table called golf course. Within that custom table, I've got some views and I've got some forms. So I've got my active golf courses view and I've got my forms here for a golf course. Now I'm going to show you how in just a few minutes I can take these things that have already been set up and expose these on a Power Apps portal. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up what they call the Portal Studio. So this is, there's in fact a few different interfaces for managing your Power Apps portal. I'm going to show you kind of the latest and greatest version from Microsoft, which is known as Portal Studio. So I'm going to go into my portal here. I'm going to click the edit button, and this is in make.powerapps.com. I'm going to click the edit button, and that's going to open up what we call Portal Studio. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create two simple pages. I'm going to create a page that's going to give me a list of all of the golf courses that are currently configured in my system. And then I'm also going to create a details view of those golf courses. And if we have time here, maybe we'll even create a form that allows the user to create them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my pages, and I'm going to create a new page. We can create a blank one. We'll wait for this to load. So this is the interface. You can see that I'm seeing kind of the portal pretty much live here, and I am able to make changes. So we've got kind of a, what you see is what you get, a WYSIWYG editor for our portal. So I'm just going to change this to list of courses. I'm going to call this courses. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into components, and one of the components I can do is I can add a list. So I'm going to click this. I'm going to add a list. What's going to ask me is, do I want to create a new one or use an existing one? In this case, I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to call this golf courses. Now I can select the table. This is going to be a list of all the different tables that are in my Dataverse environment. Again, the key here is that portals are backed by a Dataverse environment. So I'm going to say golf course. I can then choose the views. So these are the views from my model-driven app. I'm going to select active golf courses. There's a few different options here. So let's say, yes, I'm going to allow them to create a new record. We're going to create a form here for insert golf course, and we'll look at that in a second. And we'll just leave the ability to view
Hey Terry, can you hear me? Is the Nick fallen off?
You're muted, Terry.
Yes, I think we have lost Nick. So you'll come back very soon.
Oh, there you go, logging out. Yep, let's give him a few moments to log back on.
All right, am I back?
Yes.
You're back, yes.
It wouldn't connect with me, so I thought I'd drop out and try and come back in. All right, can you see my screen again now? Perfect, okay. So right, so we left it off, I was just gonna create this list. So this is saved, we got our list, and all I've done is I've said here is I want to see a list of courses based on the views that I've already created in my model-driven app. And we got permissions. I'm not enabling permissions yet. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say browse website because I want to see what this looks like when I look at the records here in the database. So this is opening up that courses page that I'm doing here. And hopefully when this page loads, we will see a list or a grid based on the view that we've defined over in our model-driven app. We'll see if it's loading here. It says, okay, we don't have permissions to view these records. I thought I turned that off, but let's do that. So I've enabled table permissions. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly enable some permissions here for the courses. So I'm going to say new permission. I'm going to say golf courses. And here I'm going to select the table of golf course. And in this case, I'm just going to be lazy and pick global access, which means I can view all golf courses in the system. I'm going to add that to the roles that we have here. There are a number of different web roles, similar to kind of how security roles allows us to kind of group those permissions. I'm going to click Save here just to be able to create those permissions. And now I'm going to give this another try here, see if we have any better luck here on my list of courses. There we go. So these are the courses. Haven't been very creative with the testing that I've done here. Let me just go back to those list of courses. But you can see very quickly I've been able to just put on the portal a list of the courses that are coming from my Dataverse environment. And now what I want to do is I want to go back here. I'm going to go back to the pages. I'm going to say new page. In fact, I'm going to go into here and I'm going to say add a child page. And this one we're going to call it course details. Course details. Course details. And what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to add a form to this page. So a form is going to display the details of a particular course. So if I add a component here, one of the other component types I can add is a form. And again, I'm going to create a new one. So I'm going to say golf course details. Golf course. So now it's going to load all the different forms that I have. In this case, I have a single form for my golf course, but if you're familiar with model-driven apps, you can create a number of different forms if you want. In this case, I want to do a read-only form so that we can see the details. Enable entity permissions on that. I don't think we have to worry about any of those advanced settings. So now we've got this. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly go back to my list of courses, and I'm going to tell it in the list where to find which form I want to display for the details. So if I open my list and I say view details and go to that one, I can say I want to target a web page, and it can target the course details page that I've just created. So with that all saved, I'm going to try browsing the website here. And what I would expect when this page refreshes is now I can actually drill down into one of these courses, and I'll be able to view the details of it based on the form that I've already created in my model-driven app. Wait for it to refresh. Right, so now that you can see these links are clickable, I can view the details. So when I click on that, what I'm going to be is I'm going to be taken to the course details page that I've created with the ID of that record on the query string, and now we can see the details for that particular course. So the idea with the Power Apps portals is that you are creating the views and forms that you probably hopefully already have if you're building out a model-driven app in Dataverse, and then you can take those and put them onto a portal or onto a website that can be accessed by anyone that you decide that you want to give the permissions to. Any questions about any of that?
Nick, is it difficult to apply the CSS onto the form once you've done that?
Yeah, so the portal uses a Bootstrap or a CSS framework called Bootstrap, which was originally developed by Twitter. Unfortunately, it is a little bit of an older version, so it uses Bootstrap 3. But there's a number of different options that you can take in terms of theming. If you're kind of curious about the theming side of things, and the last, I'd say 3 or 4 tips that we have on our YouTube channel are about theming. Within the Portal Studio, there is this theming area. So you can do some basic, like if you just kind of want to change some colors, you can do that. Kind of the next level up is to create a custom Bootstrap theme. And I mean, if you really want to get fancy, you can make portals that look nothing like these other portals by getting particularly fancy with your CSS. So it really depends on if you've got CSS skills, you can kind of go a long ways. If you don't have CSS skills, there's some kind of stuff you can do out of the box. So let's just say I want the dark blue one. I click on that. That's going to change the whole look of my portal here. Now when I go to browse website, the whole look and feel of my portal will change. And you can see here there's some, 7 different options here in terms of the colors that you can change with just this basic theme editor. And if you want to get into your own custom Bootstrap theme, you can get quite a bit, there's hundreds of different options. So you can see here, I've just changed the whole look and feel of my portal by just switching out that theme.
Cool, cheers.
Yeah. Okay, jumping back to the presentation here. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at, so what we were just looking at was the most basic portals, which really gives you get your home page, you get your sign in, and you get your profile page. Beyond that, really the rest of the portal is up to you. Microsoft gives you some sample content pages, but most of the time those gets ripped out and you replace them with the content that you want. However, there are actually 5 different Power Apps portals templates that are available to you when you are creating a portal. So what we've got is we've got the starter template, which I just showed you. Now, the starter template is the only template that's really applicable in the case where you have a Dataverse instance that does not contain any of the Dynamics apps. So if you just have a plain Dataverse instance, no Dynamics apps in there, Start is really your only option, because as you'll see in these other 4 templates, there are things like the help desk, which has a dependency on the case entity. There's knowledge-based functionality. Again, those are record types, those are entities or tables that only exist if you have Dynamics installed. So if you just have a plain Dataverse, then you've got your starter template. If you have Dynamics installed as well, then you've got a few more options in terms of which templates you can use. So just quickly jumping back to this here. When we are in our make.powerapps.com, I'll just leave the Portal Studio here. In terms of actually installing a portal, now what I'm going to do is this is just a basic Dataverse environment. So when I go to create an app, the only option I have is portal from blank. I don't have any other portal options in here. However, if I'm going to switch this over to this one, which has Dynamics installed in here, when I go to create an app, there's actually going to be a number of other portal templates that become available. So we've got portal from blank, which is our starter template, but we've actually got 4 other templates. We've got community, customer self-service, partner, and employee self-service. So if I go back here, these are the templates that we have available to us. Starter or portal from blank, customer self-service, employee self-service, community, and partner. So really all of these kind of build on top of each other. Anything that's in starter exists in all the rest, but we'll see here just quickly what we get out of each one of these templates. So within the starter, again, we've got profile and authentication. Otherwise, it's essentially a blank slate. You kind of add your own entity form, or your own lists, your own forms to your application. You're kind of building it yourself from scratch. Again, there's no requirements to have Dynamics at all installed in your Dataverse environment. The rest of these templates do require that you have Dynamics installed for them to be available. So customer self-service and employee self-service are essentially the exact same template. The only difference between the two is that with customer self-service, you'll set up authentication for external audiences. So that's going to be your Twitter, your Facebook, your Microsoft account, your LinkedIn, that sort of thing, your external identity providers. Whereas the employee self-service portal, because you are, any organization who's using this is most likely using Azure Active Directory for their authentication. That's the authentication that comes with the employee self-service portal. So with employee self-service, you're logging into the portal with Azure Active Directory. With customer self-service, you're logging in with all those other varieties of identity providers. But beyond the authentication, the functionality on the portals themselves is identical between those two options. So the functionality that you get out of the box with those templates is you get help desk. So this is a help desk functionality built on top of the Dynamics 365 customer service application. So within customer service, you have the case entity. So the help desk functionality is essentially a pre-built template that includes lists and forms for exposing the case entity. So they would give you a list of here are all your customer, or here are all your cases. They would create forms for creating a new case, for editing a case, completing a case, interacting back and forth between the customer service representatives and the people submitting the cases. So it is kind of a template around that help desk functionality. Also, as part of that template is you'll get discussion forums. So if you want your audiences to be able to go in and kind of have standard discussion forum functionality, so creating new forum threads, creating new posts on those threads, that's functionality that you can get out of the portal as well as the ability to expose knowledge base. So within Dynamics 365 customer service, there's a knowledge base functionality. So you can take those knowledge base articles and expose those and make them searchable on your portal as well. Now you can be very explicit about which knowledge articles are shown on the portal. It's not all of them. You have to say basically, yes, this knowledge article can be displayed on the portal. But you can make those knowledge articles searchable on your portal so that external audiences can see those knowledge base articles. Again, hopefully helping with reducing the number of tickets. Again, it's all about self-service. So if people can find the information that they need in the knowledge base without submitting a support ticket, I think pretty much that's a win-win-win for everyone. So those are that's the functionality you get out of those self-service templates. You get the help desk, you get the discussion forums, and you get the knowledge base. The other template that we have is community. So community has all the features of customer self-service plus 2 additional areas, which is it has blog functionality. Now, I mean, if you're really keen on having the world's greatest blog, I don't know if I would say that the community portal has the world's greatest blogging functionality. I have my own blog for portal stuff, and it's not built on portals. So if that probably tells you what you need to know about the blogging functionality. It's basic. It's certainly better than nothing, but it's I use WordPress for my blog, as well as the ideas functionality. So the ability for community members to submit ideas or requests for your products or services, and then people can kind of vote them up or vote them down, that sort of thing. So those are the 2 additional features that you get on top of customer self-service, are blogs and ideas, and you get those as part of the community portal. And then the last template, and certainly the most complex of all the templates, is the partner portal. So the partner portal has all the features of customer self-service. So you get your help desk, your discussion forums, and your knowledge base, but it also includes contact, account, and opportunity management. So the idea with the partner portal is you're an organization who sells or distributes things via partners. So you want to give a portal for your partners to come in and say register their deals, register their opportunities, register or create accounts and contacts for the people that they're working with. So it's almost like a little mini CRM for that partner for their work that they're doing with your organization. So those are the templates. Quickly, I'm going to talk about licensing because it is a very huge topic of conversation. So in terms of licensing, we've talked about how typically this is meant for external audiences. When we talk about Power Apps portals, there's essentially 3 types of users. So if internal people are accessing a Power Apps portal, Power Apps is a portal is licensed like a Canvas or a model-driven app. So whether you're using like the per app licenses, where you get, the per app licenses get you 2 apps, you can have 2 Canvas apps, a model-driven app, a Canvas app, or a portal. So a portal just counts as one of those apps, and that's the kind of licenses you need for anyone who's logging in to one of your portals with Azure Active Directory. So anyone who's an employee of the organization that owns the portal needs to be licensed for Power Apps in order to get in. More commonly, however, are people who are not members, are not employees of that organization. So that those kind of fall broadly into 2 categories. Anonymous. So if someone's not logged into your portal, what you have is you essentially pay per page view. And those are essentially licensed on, a page view basis. In term, I've got some numbers here just to kind of give you some rough ideas. So 100,000 page views gives you is $100 US per month. Now is where it gets interesting, which is the external authenticated. So as people are logged into your portal, essentially the way that Microsoft has licensed it is every time someone logs into the portal, they get a 24-hour pass into the portal, and that pass costs you X number of dollars depending on the volume that you're purchasing. So, for example, if I log into your portal, if I logged in right now, I would cost 1, let's call them tokens. That token, I can log in then 1 million times over the next 24 hours, and it doesn't cost me another token. But if I were to log in 25 hours from now, then that's going to consume another token. And then depending on the volumes, you can see here, we've got, if you want 100 logins for a month, that's $200 US, all the way up to, if you need hundreds of thousands of logins, then certainly the discounts are, quite a bit more per log, or quite a bit less per login. You're down to, I think, 12 cents a login versus $2 a login. So just depending on your volumes, that's what you're going to do. So just a couple of keys here is that currently there's no dashboards or reports about the volume of logins that you're using. You have to essentially get numbers from Microsoft support. As of right now, this licensing is not enforced. So let's say you bought 100 logins and there's the 101st person to log into your portal is not going to get a message saying you're not licensed and you can't get in. You will be able to log in. That person will be able to log in. Obviously, if you are abusing this lack of license enforcement, you might get some calls from Microsoft, and there might be some enforcement that way. But as of right now, the 101st person to log in is not going to get blocked. What you're going to eventually get is an email from Microsoft saying, hey, you should probably buy more licenses because the consumption that you have right now is not in alignment with what you purchased. The reason I say this is that in terms of estimating licenses, that's kind of the trickiest part is how many people are going to log into your portal? Well, it's kind of tough to guess. So use your best judgment. There's really no benefit to overestimating. So, people often think, hey, I'm going to create the world's best portal. It's going to be, everyone's going to log in every single day. And they're going to log in, and we're going to have millions of people. Well, your licensing costs can get pretty sky high pretty quickly. Chances are people are not going to log in every day to your portal. So be realistic with your estimates, knowing that, if you're a little bit under, if you're a little bit over, it's not going to be the end of the world. So at the same time, you don't want to be too, you don't want to underestimate too much because licensing enforcement, I'm sure, is coming at some point, and you don't want to get into the situation where you've, kind of assumed, oh, we'll only have 100 people log in, you have 1,000, all of a sudden Microsoft starts sending you a bill for that. So there's no incentive to overestimate, although underestimating may lead to pain once licensing is enforced. Quickly here, because I know we've got to wrap up here in about a minute. Just in terms of common use cases, again, help desk, pretty much the first phase of any portals implementation we're doing. Most often it's some sort of help desk. We see a lot of order submission systems, but the key thing to understand is that there's no e-commerce capabilities. So there's not like a shopping cart, there's not payment built in, any of that sort of thing, but simple order submissions where you're filling out a form and clicking submit on an order is very common. We do a lot of partner portals. That's probably the most common type of portal that we do. So very common is to do partner portals. And then within the COVID-19 days that we're dealing with, we're seeing a lot of booking of tests or vaccinations. as well as a lot of portals that people are spinning up as organizations are starting to return to work, where people can report their, I've got no symptoms, whatever their COVID-19 status is. So that's what we're really seeing these days in terms of common use cases for a portal. Great, I think we're at time, but I'm more than happy to stick around if people have questions. But otherwise, those were the slides that I've prepared for today.
Cool, thanks for that, Nick. Just a quick question on the licensing, just to confirm. So say, for example, you get the $100 US per month and you get 100 logins. That's not simultaneous logins at any one time, that's just a rolling count for the month, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So so like 100, if you had one person who logged in every day in a month with 30 days, that person would consume 30 of those logins.
That's right, yeah. So you'd have 3.5 users roughly that would then chew up that $100 amount.
Yeah, $200 amount, because that, the 200.
Sorry, yeah.
200 for 100 logins. Yep.
Sorry, 200. Yeah, I was getting confused. Yep. Cool.
Yep.
I just want to clarify. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have one here. Thanks for the preso. Question is about how, so we're talking about mobiles. So how is that going to show on the mobile phones if it's a web portal?
Yeah, so the great thing about the Bootstrap framework is that it is a responsive website. So let me just bring it up here. So if I look at this site, let me just simulate mobile here. So the website is designed to be kind of viewable on a mobile device.
Okay.
So it's not an application, it's not a native application, but it is certainly meant to be consumed on mobile devices as well. So that's kind of considered as part of that Bootstrap framework is really the key there.
Okay, cool. Cheers.
Any other questions?
Ben, did you have a question around, I think, multiple projects using the same?
Yeah. We had an issue a while ago at the part of training where we had the two portals, and my understanding is from the older licensing days, you could only have one portal type per dynamics instance. And one of the things we noticed that when we started spinning up new portals with a new licensing model, they were getting a type of custom portal, I think, or starter portal, I can't quite remember. We had an issue where we actually had two portals already in production from the old licensing model. But when I went to the new one, when we went to lower environments, I mean, production was fine, it was already set up, but the newer and lower environments, we couldn't fire up a second portal of the same type. So I'm just wondering if you've come across that issue before. I've already reached out to Peter Schmidt. I think we may have solved it, but I just can't remember off the top of my head. But just for the audience here, I was wondering if there's any issues there that we might have to.
So without doing a lot of kind of workarounds, essentially you can have one of each type of portal in any single Dataverse environment. So that kind of means that the limit of you can have up to 5 portals in a single Dynamics environment. So you can have one of each type. So you can't, once you've installed a partner portal, you can't install a second partner portal in that environment. There are known ways of kind of getting around it, but it's not by just going in and saying, hey, I want to install a second partner portal. I know Microsoft is working on fixing that. Really what's happening underneath the scenes is that when you install a partner portal, Microsoft has all of that configuration data that they import into your environment, and it all has these specific GUIDs, so specific IDs. And so if you try and install a second one, it's going to be records with those same IDs, and obviously that's not going to work. So that's the technical challenge that Microsoft is dealing with right now, is just the way that gets installed, is that there's just known GUIDs, and they obviously need to be unique. So as of right now, the best kind of assumption to work under is that you can have one of each type of portal in a single Dataverse environment.
Cool. Thanks, Nick.
Nick, just a quick question. So Power Apps portal only leveraging Microsoft Dataverse, obviously. In the future roadmap, is any possibility of that tapping into data source like SharePoint directly?
I would think in the long term, or as Microsoft likes to say, in the fullness of time, I would suspect that the direction is to, probably tap into the connector framework. But I'll probably be long dead by then. I mean, that's probably, I mean, there's absolutely nothing imminent that we've seen. That just seems like a logical, conclusion to this product. But that's years and years away from now.
Right.
Now there is a, specifically with SharePoint, there is a SharePoint integration based on how model-driven apps can integrate with SharePoint. But really what we'd all like to see is that we can just tap into the connector framework like Canvas apps. And yeah, that's I'm sure if Microsoft could wave their magic wand, they would do that. But I think we're still a ways away from that.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because there are many Power apps being developed connecting or consuming directly from SharePoint list and library, and that's kind of a direct way to present or surface the data to the users. So to have to convert everything to Dataverse architecture and then present it, it's kind of a little bit of a mountain to climb for some organizations. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the other question would be would it be easier for Microsoft to just make it so Canvas apps, which can be viewed in a browser as well, would it just make it easier to make those accessible to external audiences? So that's another option, is maybe Microsoft would do that before they would make the connector framework available in portals. Your guess is as good as mine as to what direction they'll end up going there.
Cool. Just on that note, there is some new docker that's come out showing you how you can assign a license to a Canvas app for a guest user, for the tenant owning the Canvas app. And also, which I've got working before, but the one thing I can't get working is apparently you can also, in the documentation, it's saying that the guest tenant that has the user, but not the Canvas app, can also supply the license, which I haven't been able to figure out how to get working. It's just a statement in the new licensing FAQs for Power Apps. That's an interesting one there to watch, I think.
Yeah, the ability for guests to use Canvas apps has been around for a little bit. And yeah, they can kind of bring their own license if you're licensed from Canvas apps in your own in your home tenant. Then I think you can kind of bring that with you. But essentially, that's just working under the premise that if you're a guest in the Azure Active Directory tenant, you're essentially like a user in that environment. So. Okay. Any other questions?
All good for mine. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate your time.
It doesn't look like anyone's got any questions. So, Nick, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. Yeah, it's 11 o'clock you're in, so thank you so much. Pete, I know you've got a meeting to go to as well straight after this, or it's already started.
I'm all good. I'm all good. It's okay.
You're all good?
You.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. Nick, we'll have access to that calendar of yours. That'll be great. Ben and I would like that. Thank you for future user group sessions there.
I look forward to being invited back.
Cheers. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Nick.
Have a great rest of your day.
Cheers.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.